Hey, Al McCoy here, and you are listening to the Solar Panel, the Phoenix Sun Show.
So finally, joining us on today's episode, the one, the only, Mr. Greg Esposito.
I heard absence makes the heart grow fonder, and after a few of the reviews I saw on iTunes, I thought maybe it was time for me to step away for a few weeks and let people try to love me again. So, how are you guys? You doing well?
We are doing pretty well. We're actually, we've gone through a lot of change over the last couple of weeks, man. I don't even know if you know who we are anymore.
I know Tim, but I don't know this old guy that looks kind of like Santa. Is that Dave, or who is this?
Like I said, we've gone through change. Don't judge.
Just because you're wearing a dress doesn't mean anything changed, Dave. Yeah. Oh, I forgot we're on YouTube now. I can't joke about what you're wearing. Yeah,
that's right.
People actually know.
You don't know what's going on below the neckline, actually.
Nor do I want to. So,
how do you know you even have anything on? I could have a dickie on right now. You know, the fake turtleneck thing. You guys wouldn't even know.
We just assume you don't have pants on.
Well, we know that.
I could have nothing but the fake turtleneck. Okay, now people have turned off the YouTube and are back to podcasting just like we always wanted them to.
The ladies are going, hey, please stand up, Dave. Yeah, that's so. Yeah,
they should.
We have like one female listener. I don't think that's what she's saying.
I think we have more than one, because some guy just told me his wife was listening, and I said something and gave away a Game of Thrones topic. By the way, sorry about that. I'll try not to do spoilers.
I meant the lady wants Dave to stand up.
Hey, that's fine with me. It's okay to qualify that one. I'd rather not know if anybody else wants me to stand up.
Well,
not that there's anything wrong with that. I just don't want to know.
It's good to be back. Finally, it's some early Saturday morning.
Tim and I had any of these uncomfortable conversations while you were out. So
no, it's actually very boring with Dave and I.
Yeah. I heard
we're a little bit too professional, just the two of us.
Listeners reached out and told me, so that's why I'm back this week. So,
and by listeners, you mean one?
I don't know. I'm making stuff up.
You got one.
I'm making stuff up. All right.
One guy was like, I miss you on the pod. And Greg's all, listeners were reaching out asking for me to come back.
That's what everybody does on social media, though, is you get one response from one person, and I do the same thing. You get one response from one person, and all of a sudden you're like, everybody's going nuts over this one thing.
My phone was blowing up. Hey, before we get into our topic, can I bring up one thing that did happen on social media this week that was extremely weird for me? Are you guys okay with that?
Go for it.
So I'm praising the Arizona Cardinals for something that they did on Twitter. They changed their Twitter name when they hired their new coach, Cliff Kingsbury, to the Arizona Cardinals with a K. And I said, this is why social's fun. This is what makes good social media in sports. The Suns account said, oh, I wonder who did that first. Because they had changed their name when they hired Igor to have the little accent mark over the S. So really, the Suns account, this thing
it's
that
okay
I felt
for
like
everybody to be creative, right? You can't just have one. If
and
one's creative, that doesn't mean nobody else is.
Well, and Dave, you know this because you had teenage daughters at one point. They're grown now, but like. That's like your child talking back to you for the first time, because I feel like I gave birth to that account in one way or another, and it's starting to talk back to me, and I had to put it in its place and go, actually, it was the Atlanta Hawks back in 2012 when they went on a winning streak that actually did that. They're the OGs, and I never got a response from the Suns account.
You know what? There's probably someone who did it even before that.
Well, that was probably. Yeah, but
the thing is, in this world, just about every single idea has already been done before.
Exactly. And why hate on a fellow sport? Like, it was it was a surreal moment for me. It felt like I was arguing with a part of myself, Your
offspring. Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, I did not mean to hijack
your
this
estranged
show.
offspring that's trying to trying to spread their own wings and live without you and barely saying hi at Christmas. That kind of offspring.
I'm pretty sure whoever's running that account has no clue who I am either. So like I think that was part of the humor of the whole thing, but I just found that very odd this week, and it involved our sons, so I thought I'd bring it up.
Well, I appreciate you guys actually talking about the Suns. Now let's talk about them a little bit more.
Wait, let me do one more Cardinals thing.
Christ, okay.
When I saw that, Cliff Kingsbury's Cardinals.
Oh yeah, not
all
exactly
Ks,
all dangerous.
people need to think about that stuff a little bit.
Yeah. You don't want to step in it like that. There's certain areas you just don't want to go.
Right.
Well, I saw
And maybe that's obviously that's my fault, not the Cardinals' fault, but still, you don't want to leave that out there.
Hey, there were some guys that tried to push Arians Nation back in the day too. That's not exactly
Right.
That's not
And
exactly
he's a
where you
bald
wanna
guy. Yeah.
go. Not where you want to go. All right, back to the Suns, Tim.
All right. So, as of the time of recording this episode, the Suns are 10-33 on the season. There is virtually no way that they are not the worst team in the West throughout the end of the season. They, have to catch up about 9 games or so, which is possible, but very unlikely. Right now, they're basically in a 4-way tie for the worst with Chicago, New York, and Cleveland. And as of right now, with taking into account the team's efficiency differential, they are expected to win a total of 20.2 games. I think all of us kind of had them closer to the 30 mark, so we were wrong on that one.
What was I saying last summer? I'm trying to remember. Can somebody help me out?
28, but we both said if they had a point guard, it'd be in the 30s. So
yeah, none of us had them at 20. We can say
true.
It's more of an inefficiency rating when you're talking about the Suns. There's nothing efficient about anything that they're doing right now.
Oh, Greg, you're back.
I am back. Dad jokes for everybody. You get a dad joke, and you get a dad joke.
So the question being, how should the Suns approach the second half of the season? Should they go ahead and tank it away and sit Devin Booker?
No, there's no benefit in tanking at this point because of the new odds. And they're already tanking without trying. So that's the beauty in this. If they don't get an actual point guard, they're not going to have a problem continuing to lose. Let's be honest with that. And I don't have a huge problem with it because they're trying. They're playing hard still. There's effort there. It just hasn't all come together. And I don't think any of us expect it to until they're not playing a G leaguer as their starting point guard. So we've seen improvement in areas. We've seen some development in areas. Obviously, DeAndre Ayton is up and down. There's nights he'll score 24 and a quarter, and there's nights he doesn't show up at all. Case in point, the Mavericks game this week. So I'm okay with it, but I don't. If you bench Devin Booker, you're also going to have to trade Devin Booker soon, eventually, because he's not going to deal with that. We saw that
with Eric Bledsoe.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, here's the thing. It doesn't matter what the Suns do the rest of the year. They're going to have a top 5 draft pick. If you look at those same projections that Tim is referencing, I'm actually on the Basketball Reference site on those projections, and it looks like they're projected at 22 wins on that one. But there's 5 teams, which you just alluded to, the Hawks, Knicks, Bulls, Cavaliers, all in the East, and then the Suns in the West, projected to be under 30 wins. And then the next lowest projection is 33.7 wins by the Orlando Magic. There's almost no way the Suns drop out of a top 5 pick, no matter what they do the rest of the year. The question is whether they go all the way to number 1 or if they end up around number 5 before the lottery odds are applied. And as we talked about, the lottery odds have changed, where it's almost as good to have a 5th pick or 4th pick as it is to have a 2nd or 1st. So I don't think the Suns have anything to worry about with the tanking. I think they should just keep trying and not try to lose games. They're already losing plenty without worrying about it. The only thing I would do is consider just setting up for next year. And that doesn't mean picking up another 19-year-old. What it does mean, or 21 or whatever year old, what it does mean is possibly trying to find just better fits on the roster. There was a rumor that came out this week. I don't know if you want to talk about right now, but on the Ringer podcast, I think it was Kevin O'Connor said that the Suns have been inquiring a little bit about Dennis Smith Jr. from Dallas, who's out of their rotation because they don't like the fit of him next to Luka Doncic. I don't know if that kind of thing materializes, but that's the kind of thing the Suns should be looking for, is another guy who is an already NBA player who might fit in their rotation, just like they did with Kelly Oubre.
Yeah, look, I would do the Milwaukee pick for Dennis Smith Jr.
I
But
think at this point, like the Suns would, of course, you would do the Milwaukee pick. I mean,
yeah,
the Milwaukee pick at this point has just become comical.
well, it has. But
No,
honestly,
it's only comical because it hasn't been used yet.
Right, but
It's
I mean,
still a good pick.
every trade is like, I would use a Milwaukee pick. Of course,
Yeah.
we would all use a Milwaukee pick for like anything.
yeah, well, this is true. That is very true. At
You
this
actually,
point,
here's the only downside on the Dennis Smith thing is you really don't want Dennis Smith and DeAnthony Melton and Elia Kobo in your point guard depth going into the rest of the year. So what you'd really have to do is try to work out who's the better long-term prospect. And, I am not convinced that Dennis Smith is next year, the year after, significantly better or even worth trading DeAnthony Melton or Elia Kobo for, because you don't need all three. And whether they're traded in the same trade or they're traded later, you don't need all three guys. And if you're putting your wagon on Dennis Smith, you're kind of giving up on the potential of a DeAnthony Melton or an Elia Kobo.
yeah, the thing I actually would rather see, and I'd take a bigger swing, is dealing their own pick at this point. Make it top one protected.
Yeah.
So if you happen to strike lightning, and you can get
Can you
Zion,
actually put a name next to that protection? Zion Williamson protected.
that? Yeah, well, that's number one protected, because there's no way that guy's not going number
Well,
one.
wouldn't that be awesome though if you could make it player protected? And then it doesn't matter if someone else goes number one. You're still, hey, I get to keep my pick at number two because Zion's still on the board.
I have a feeling you probably could do that. Like, I mean, depending on, I can't imagine there's a rule that says you can't. Like, it's probably just an agreement between you and the other
No
GM.
matter
So
what, if this dude is on the board, we keep the pick. Otherwise, you can have it.
yeah, I mean, that's what it's at. Any other kid that's coming out of college, I don't care about for this roster. If you got a chance to pick Zion, I want the pick. It's that simple, because you don't need scouts to pick Zion Williamson. You know that the eye test tells you everything you need to know when he's on ESPN every third day. So,
Hey, let's talk about the scouts part. So I did not get a chance to talk to James Jones. We'll talk about this later in the pod about the interview with James Jones this week. But we didn't get to talk about his lack of scouts in the front office. But seriously, if you've got a top 5 pick in this upcoming draft, and you don't expect to keep your other picks, how badly do you need scouts to be combing the country and the world looking for prospects if you're really only going to be picking in the top 4 or 5 and all those guys are on national TV all the time?
See, I actually was talking to a good friend of mine about this week, and I think in the world we live in now, I don't think you really need the ability to or the scouts if you're at the top of the draft, because there's enough written about these guys. There's enough them on television. I think the only case where you would is with a guy like, if there's a prospect like and I know you hate mentioning this guy's name on the show, but like
Well, we
Luka
have to do it.
Doncic.
It's like a rule, I guess.
But like where there's a top European prospect where you're not watching him as much, it probably benefits you. But if you're looking at college guys here in the States, I don't think you need those. And I think you could probably just read a bunch of mock drafts and top writers of college basketball in the NBA to get enough of an idea of what you need to do. I mean, to be frank, how tough would last year's draft have been without scouts outside of Doncic?
Well,
I don't think very
frank,
tough.
To be frank, McDonough set records for how many players he scouted personally as well as his whole staff. And how did he do in the draft?
Well, I mean, it's very true. His record was spotted at best, but I think that's just because of the world he came from. He was in scouting before he became a GM.
I'm just saying, did it help him make better draft selections? There were better players picked later than his picks in every year.
You want the honest truth? I think you could blindfold a monkey and throw darts and draft about as well as most general managers because it's that big of a crapshoot. Like it's not like any of these guys have super, inside intel. They talk to the coaches, they talk to family, they watch games. Okay, well, what are coaches and family and people going to say? Most of them are going to praise the kid that they work with. Most coaches aren't going to go, yeah, this guy actually really sucks. You really shouldn't draft him. Like they're not going to do that because it doesn't benefit them. They want top.
Well,
They
there's
want their guys.
there's the interview sessions. There's the, getting to know the player themselves, getting them into your city and all that. But that really, at that point, you want your coaches to be talking to the players, that you're thinking about drafting. So when it comes to next summer, when you've got the NBA Combine, next spring NBA Combine, and then leading up to the draft, at that point, all the skills have been evaluated. Then you're trying to figure out their fit in the NBA. And you really need your hands-on coaches and front office and all that for that, not necessarily these advanced scouts that are going all over. Now, look, folks, I'm not crapping all over the scouting profession. I'm just saying that with so much information out there now, it's a little less necessary than it used to be. Now, if the draft changes to taking out high school again, then you'll have to have scouts. Because you can't, those 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds are not on national television. They're not totally prevalent. Maybe you could rely on, reports from the ESPN Draft Express guys, but really you should have scouts at that point. But right now, when all your players are coming out of college or the readily available even Euro leagues, those are all available on tape and all that.
Well, and like to your point, the combine, those pre-draft workouts in towns, those are speed dating. I mean, that's I'd rather have a psychologist in the room than a scout to tell me who this person is.
So at that point, right?
Yeah. So
well, you can have one 48-hour visit and one 24-hour visit per player. So if you got to narrow it down at some point, but you can narrow it down pretty well to the kind of players you want to target at your pick, and then who they think they'll be available at their pick, and then you bring them in for a couple of days, and that's how you get to know them.
Yeah. So I don't think that the scouting thing it hurts, but I think it is tipping their hand that likely, that pick may not be around. So if you're going to move it, I think you move it at the trade deadline rather than waiting, because it's going to be a better perceived value unless the Suns go on some insane run between now and that first week in February. The perceived value of that pick is going to be likely higher than the reality of that pick by the time we get to the draft lottery in May.
That's the way it always is. Perceived value of draft picks, because every GM thinks they can do better with the pick than not having it. So yeah, the picks definitely have value in trades.
Yeah, I'm high on Zion, and I don't care about the rest. There's your second dad
Zion.
joke. So yeah.
High on Zion.
If people think that scouting, though, is not important, just go look at the Denver Nuggets and what they've been able to do with their draft picks.
Right, but if you can pick it, all we're saying, we're not saying it's not important. I agree with you, Tim. The Nuggets have done some really incredible drafting at their points. Those are exceptions. 25 out of 30 teams, it's a crapshoot.
Well, right. And you want to know the irony about the Denver thing? One of the Suns' main guys that did scouting, Pat Conley, was the brother of the GM in Denver. So, like,
his brother was more. No, sorry, Pat. Pat was great. I miss Pat being around.
Really, Suns just having basically never once hit. Not never once, but, in the Ryan McDonough era, never once hitting on a second round pick has really hurt them. And I mean by not hitting, like not even finding a serviceable player in the second round.
They traded one of their second round picks for John Lure. That was a really good year for him.
I mean, it's not hitting on a second round pick, though. That's merely trading your... and then the only one you can really give him credit for is DeAnthony Melton, but they didn't even draft him, and then
no, he picked Elie Okobo first,
right,
and left Melton on the board.
Not to mention Malik Beasley, but I guess we can talk about that at a different point. What I want to talk about here, though, because we're running out of time. Listen, so if you want to go ahead and support the podcast, you can. It's super easy. We have a bunch of people there doing it. It's like $1 a month. All you have to do is open up the podcasting app that you're listening on right now, or if you're on YouTube, it's in the show notes below, wherever it is. And there it says support this podcast. You hit that little button and you can support the solar panel for $1 a month. And we appreciate all of you guys that do. And I do want to thank a specific supporter, Bailey Lyons. And if you do decide that you want to support us with $5 or $10 a month, I will personally send you some Suns swag. Bailey did that. But here's the thing, Bailey. I don't have your address. I don't know how to get in touch with you. So you have to hit us up on Twitter or on Facebook. Send us a message. Say hi. I'll get your address and I'll send you some Suns swag. But if you want to go ahead and support the podcast, all you got to do, look in the show notes, hit the little support this podcast button.
And we'll get some solar panel stickers going too. And then for any big fish out there that want a high dollar support, I'll break out some autographed merchandise out of the prize closet back here behind me if you're watching on YouTube. And
there's only 3 options. There's $1 a month, $5 a month, and $10 a month.
Yeah, I'm talking about the $10 big fish. I'm not talking about somebody breaking out $100 a month for this show. I wouldn't even do that. So if you hit the $10 a month, well, I'll see what I can hook you up with. But
Greg, if you put $100 a month into this show, you're going the wrong direction. I don't think you understand the model.
I know. If we start supporting, we're already supporting this show.
Hey, listen, but like $1 a month is like buying one of us a cup of gas station coffee once a month, and I think it's worth it if you get a lot out of the show.
I agree. Thank you for everybody who's done it so far, and anybody that does it in the future. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you, even if you don't, for taking the time to listen to 3 idiots talking about a team they love to hate and hate to love. So,
yep.
Before we go to break, I want to talk about Quincy Acey briefly. Suns signed him to a 10-day contract. My takeaway from it was that the Suns recognize their needs on the roster, and they did something to address it. But what stuck out to me was, look, if they're signing Quincy Acey for a 10-day contract, that's likely something they're going to try and the need, not necessarily with Quincy Acey, but something that they're going to try and approach this offseason.
I thought that was interesting that excuse me. I thought that was interesting that they had Quincy Acey on the roster for about 2 hours officially, and he got into the game and played about 10 to 15 minutes at least in that first game.
He looked like he hadn't played in a minute.
Well, he did, but Igor put him out there. Yep. And yet they had his name is escaping me right now. That's how much he played. He played 5 total minutes in 10 games that he was with the team. Who was Eric Moreland? They signed Eric Moreland, had him for about a month, and put him in 1 game for 5 minutes. They have Quincy Acey for 2 hours, and they put him in a game for more minutes than Moreland ever played. So obviously, Igor likes what Acey brings a little bit better than Moreland. Moreland was a Richaun Holmes clone, so he was kind of insurance against injury, I believe, whereas Quincy Acey is more of a wing guy, and he happens to be the heftiest dude out there for the Suns, so he can bring a little bit more box out ability, because the Suns are awful at rebounding because of the fact that every one of their non-DeAndre Ayton guys or Richaun Holmes guys is too skinny to box anybody out.
Hey, James Jones, if you're looking for hefty guys, I am available. My height probably isn't what you want, but I got the weight, so.
Well, that's what Quincy Acey says. He's about 6'7".
But do you guys agree with me that the Suns, based off of this signing, recognize the need for a defensive power forward who can rebound the ball a bit, and that might be something that we know that they will approach this offseason?
How could you not know that that's one of your needs while watching this team?
Yeah.
I mean, it's that glaring.
It's just impossible for the rest of the Suns roster besides Ayton and Holmes to actually box anybody out. They just sealing them off on rebounds is really difficult because they don't have a lot of sand in their bucket. And AC does have a little bit more of that. Plus, he's a 35% three-point shooter, which means he's at least serviceable on that end.
I couldn't help him his first shot.
Well, he passed up a lot of shots in his first game anyway. And I respected that out of him. He found other open guys because he realized I just came off the street 2 hours ago. I probably shouldn't take this really important three in the fourth quarter. But he did play most of that fourth quarter, so he obviously did other things well. I appreciated that.
When your power forward and your small forward could link arms and usually wouldn't be as big as the power forward on the opposing team, you've got a hole in your roster. And Quincy Acey isn't the long-term answer. He's a stopgap, obviously, but it's a need that they will address at some point. And if they don't, I mean, I guess we were saying the point guard was a need they needed to address too, and they haven't done that in about a year. But if they don't, we're gonna know that this is an overmatched front office for sure. So,
I mean, call me crazy. We're about to go to a break, but I really liked Anthony Melton.
Mm-hmm.
There
are some things to really like about D'Anthony Melton, and there are some things that he really has to work on to be a long-term serviceable player.
I just wonder if they're doing him a disservice by forcing him into this position right now, and does it impact the growth at some point? But I like what I see in certain areas for sure.
I like Melton's attitude. The thing is, I think if you played Eliakobo too much, you could potentially stunt his long-term growth a little bit if you overplay him as a young guy. I think with Melton is so much about energy. I think he doesn't care right now. This year is just going to be a blur anyway. Anything he does this year is a blur, whether it's 5 minutes a game or 30 minutes a game. He's just going to play balls out every second he's on the court. He's not going to know what the heck he's doing most of the time, but it's not going to affect him if he plays 30 versus 5 minutes. So I think it's okay for him to play a ton of minutes as a rookie, which is probably why Igor has grafted onto him as his starter over in Eliakobo and letting go of the other point guards the Suns had. So that's what they see is Melton is unaffected by minutes. It doesn't mean he's more effective with more minutes. It just means he's unaffected. He's going to be the same dude for 5 versus 30 minutes.
Now, to bring this YouTube portion of the show full circle, he's the Dave King of playing because his balls are out. So there you go.
Don't let me stand up.
You probably noticed me getting up and down for about the first 15 minutes of the show. If you were listening, since you are listening to the podcast, you probably heard me not say anything for about 15 minutes. Can I just say how hard it is to podcast with a 3-year-old running around?
Yeah, it's just as tough with a 2-year-old, which is part of why we do this so early on a Saturday, because my 2-year-old sleeps.
Yeah, you guys try to get it done before the kids wake up, and I'm just an old guy, so I'm up anyway.
Well, the problem is Tim's on the East Coast, so it's actually 9:30 there rather than 7:30. So that kid goes, "Hey, it's time to get up and let's party," and Tim's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!"
You need to change his sleep cycle, Tim. Just have him go to bed at midnight so he's sleeping past 9:30.
Well, here's the thing. So I just moved, and I got this new office, and I'm like, thank God my office has a door. I can lock it for when I'm casting. This will be great. So today's the first episode in the new office, which my mic probably sounds a little bit echoey because I haven't set up my soundproofing. Long story short, all he did was start banging on the door.
We couldn't hear it, so you could have just ignored him.
What you need to do is put your soundproofing stuff on the outside of your door. So when he bangs on it, it just absorbs the sound.
And on that note, let's go ahead and take a break. When we get back, we're going to talk about James Jones' exclusive interview for Brightside Night and some of Dave King's takeaways.